She was born in France, she trained in France, she competed for France, wore the French flag as a junior, and was one of the most gifted young gymnasts the country had produced in years. And when the biggest night of her life arrived, an Olympic final in Paris, in her own home country, she stood on top of the podium and draped a different flag over her shoulders. Not the blue, white, and red of France, the green and white of Algeria. 17 years old, a score of 15.700 on the uneven bars, the performance of her life, beating the reigning world champion from China and an Olympic champion from the United States. And with it, she didn't just win a gold medal. She became the first gymnast from any African nation in the entire history of the Olympic Games to win a medal of any color, the first ever. Her name is Kaylia Nemour, and the reason she was standing there in Algerian colors, in the middle of Paris, with a French crowd that had wanted to claim her as their own, is one of the most quietly heartbreaking stories in the sport. Because to get to that podium, she first had to be told, in effect, by her own country, not you, not now, maybe not ever. Let's go back to the beginning. Kaylia Nemour was born on the 30th of December 2006 in a small commune in the Loire Valley of central France. Her mother is French. Her father is Algerian, his family roots in the Gijel province of northeastern Algeria. That dual heritage, French and Algerian, sat quietly in the background of her childhood. For years it meant nothing more than a richer family story. It would end up defining her entire career. She started gymnastics at 4 years old, and the talent was obvious almost immediately. She trained at a club called Avouin Beaumont in western France. Not one of the giant national centers, but a club that believed in her completely, with coaches who built their program around her. That detail matters. Hold on to it, because the bond between Nemour and her club is the hinge the whole story turns on. By her early teens, she was a rising star of French gymnastics, competing internationally, winning club titles, marked as a genuine future Olympian for France. And then her own body threw the first obstacle in her path. Just after she turned 13, Nemour grew 14 centimeters in a single year. For most kids, a growth spurt is just awkward. For an elite gymnast, whose entire sport depends on precise control of a body moving through the air, it can be catastrophic. The rapid growth triggered a bone and cartilage condition in her knees, osteochondritis. In early 2021, at 14 years old, she needed surgery on both knees, and a recovery that would keep her out of the sport for more than a year. That's where a difficult injury turned into something much bigger than an injury, because when Nemour recovered and got medical clearance from her own doctors to return, the French Gymnastics Federation didn't agree. The federation took the view that her problems were linked to overtraining, and it wanted control. It insisted she follow a slow, phased, federation-supervised reintroduction, and reportedly wanted her to leave her club and relocate to the National Training Center in Paris under national team oversight. Nemour, her family, and the coaches at Avouin Beaumont who had raised her in the sport said no. They wanted to keep the program that had made her great. And so a standoff began. Not really about whether she was healthy, but about who got to decide. The athlete and her club on one side, the National Federation on the other, and a teenager caught in the middle, watching the prime years of her career tick away while the two sides fought. Now, and this is important, because this channel doesn't do villains and heroes cartoons, the Federation would argue it was trying to protect a young athlete's long-term health. That's a real position. But from where Nemour stood, the effect was simple and brutal. She was healthy, she was ready, she was arguably the best young bars worker in the country, and she was being frozen out. Kept off the team, kept out of competition, her career stalling for reasons that had nothing to do with her ability. So she made a decision almost no one in her position ever makes. She looked at her father's homeland, Algeria, and chose it. Quick question before we go on. If your own country's system was holding you back like this, would you have the courage to walk away and represent somewhere else? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I really want to know where you draw the line. Choosing Algeria sounds clean when you say it fast. It was anything but. Nemour held dual citizenship, so she was eligible, but the French Federation threatened to block the switch. The dispute climbed all the way up to the level of the French sports minister. There were legal battles that dragged on for months. An online petition sprang up just to let her compete at the 2023 African Championships, a qualifying gateway she needed. And underneath all the politics was a girl who just wanted to do gymnastics. She has said the situation left her with mixed, complicated feelings. This was her country too, the only home she'd ever known, and it was fighting her. Eventually the switch was approved. Nemour would represent Algeria. And the moment the handcuffs came off, she showed everyone exactly what France had been sitting on. At the 2023 World Championships in Antwerp, representing Algeria, Nemour won silver on the uneven bars, the first World Championship medal ever won by a gymnast representing an African nation. Not the first gold, the first medal of any kind in the history of the sport for the entire continent. She was already rewriting record books, and the Olympics hadn't even started. She has an element named after her in the sport's official code of points, the Nemour. Through late 2023 and into 2024, she went on a tear across the World Cup circuit, posting monster scores in Cottbus, Doha, and Baku, routinely clearing 15.5. By the time Paris arrived, the French-born girl the French Federation had benched was one of the favorites for Olympic gold, competing against France in France. The 4th of August, 2024, the women's uneven bars final at Bercy Arena. The uneven bars are the most technical, most unforgiving apparatus in the sport, a blur of release moves and catches where the smallest hesitation ends everything. And this final was stacked. The reigning world champion, Chu Chi-yan of China, the defending Olympic champion, Nina Derweil of Belgium, and American star Suni Lee, herself in the middle of a comeback from kidney disease. Nemour had qualified first, more than half a point clear of the field, but qualifying means nothing if you can't repeat it under Olympic pressure. Chu went and delivered a brilliant routine, 15,500, enormous. Now there was no room at all. Nemour would have to be perfect. She was. 26 seconds of the most difficult bar work in the world, strung together in combinations almost no one else on earth even attempts, finished with a stuck double layout dismount. The instant her feet hit the mat, she knew. The tears came before the score did. Gold. Ahead of the world champion. Ahead of an Olympic champion. The first Olympic gymnastics medal in the history of Algeria and the history of Africa. Her country's first Olympic gold of any kind in 36 years. Nemour wrapped herself in the Algerian flag and paraded around the arena, weeping. A 17-year-old who had just carried an entire continent onto a stage it had never stood on before. And when reporters asked the obvious question, the France question, the nationality question, her answer was strikingly calm. She said she doesn't really think about it, that she won the medal for herself and for Algeria, that France was behind her now. I turned the page, she said. No bitterness on display, no score to settle out loud, just a quiet line under a chapter that had cost her years. That composure is the whole story, honestly. She didn't win out of spite. She won because she was that good all along. And the tragedy France has to sit with is that everyone could see it, except the people in charge of keeping her. And she's not done. Nemour has kept climbing. At the 2025 World Championships, she took gold again on the uneven bars, added a silver on balance beam, and finished a strong 4th in the all-around, proving she's far more than a one-event specialist. She's still a teenager. She now trains in France again, at a club in Dijon, competing for Algeria, a strange, quietly poetic arrangement that tells you the anger was never really hers to carry. Ahead of her sits the World Championships in Rotterdam this October, and beyond that Los Angeles 2028, where she'll be 21 in her prime, the defending Olympic champion, carrying the hopes of a whole continent that now knows its flag can fly at the very top of this sport. A girl born in France, told by France to wait, to slow down, to fall in line, who instead picked up her father's flag, walked onto the biggest stage in the world in the middle of Paris, and made history that France can now only watch from the outside. So here's my question for you. Was the French Federation protecting a young athlete, or did they let a generational talent slip through their fingers? And does Kaylia Nemour defend her Olympic title in Los Angeles in 2028? Drop your prediction below. I read every single one. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, hit subscribe, because Rotterdam is in October, LA is coming, and Kaylia Nemour's story is still being written, one flag at a time.